So how did we get to a place where this idiot announces a ceasefire agreement when there clearly was no ceasefire agreement? I think I know why this all happened, and it's something that's been building up over the last 2 weeks. And so I want to explain my theory of how we got here. Because the guy is an idiot. That's certainly true. But he's not that stupid, is he? And it wouldn't even really be a question of stupidity. It would have to be some sort of delusion that is so severe that his cabinet needs to step in and invoke the 25th Amendment to strip him of his authority, or Congress needs to impeach and remove him from office. Of course, we know neither of those things is going to happen, but that's what should happen if this man actually believed that there was a ceasefire agreement when there clearly wasn't. That would show that he is so disconnected from reality that he really cannot be left in the office. But I don't think that that's what happened here. I think it is the result of panic. And I think it is the result of something, dynamics that have been happening over the last couple of weeks, which I want to explain here. Now, in my mind, it begins with his disastrous "I want to be a dictator" parade that blew up in his face and made him the subject of worldwide ridicule. I mean, everyone was just laughing at this utter buffoon. The thing was a complete disaster and an utter humiliation for him. And he is a malignant narcissist. He is a seriously disturbed person. And the level of narcissistic injury that he suffered from that, I think, really tripped something in his brain. You couple that, at the same time his parade was exploding, blowing up in his face as a disaster, you had the No Kings protests all across this country. Far more people turned out for the No Kings protests than showed up for his parade or watched it on TV. So you had that. You also had him being humiliated at the G7 summit, to where he had to leave early, make up some friggin' excuse for why he had to leave. And so because of all of this, I think he was desperate to show that he's not a laughingstock. He's not a complete and utter joke. That he's really a strong leader, right? That's what he wanted to project with his tyrant parade. He wanted to project the image of an absolute dictator. Instead, he projected the image of a circus clown, right? A complete and total loser. And so he had to come back from that. He had to do something. Of course, there's also a lot of bad news out there because he is destroying the economy. Pretty much everything that he's doing is wildly unpopular with the American people. So for a lot of reasons, he wanted to change the subject and he wanted to project strength. And then we had reporting from the New York Times the other day, which I discussed yesterday, which said that one of the reasons that Donald Trump decided to attack Iran was because he watches Fox News all the time, and he saw that the Israeli strikes against Iran were wildly popular with the Fox News audience. And so he wanted to get in on that action. And so first he tried to claim credit for it. He put out some tweets making it seem like it was, it was a joint operation with the Israelis and that actually he was the one who was leading all of it. Completely untrue. And so that really didn't get him the praise and adulation and the credit that he wanted. So he decided to bomb Iran himself. So I think that's what happened. But being the absolute moron that he is, he didn't think anything through. And he probably couldn't think it through even if he stopped and tried to think it through. He's an idiot. And he doesn't understand consequences. And he fails to take into consideration what the other party might do when you drop bombs on them and how other people might react. And one of the things that he failed to consider was the economic impact. Now, shortly after Trump attacked Iran, they announced that they might be closing the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of the world's supply of oil flows. Now, if Iran did that, that could really have catastrophic consequences for the world economy, including the United States. And while Trump tries to blame Biden for everything, and I'm sure he would try to blame Biden if that happened, no one's going to believe that shit. I mean, his cult would repeat it, but I don't even think most of them would believe that Biden was responsible for that. So he started freaking out about that because he knows that if the economy tanks, and by the way, we're on the verge of technically being in recession. We've had 1 quarter of negative economic growth. If we have 1 more quarter of negative economic growth, we will officially be in recession. Trump's recession. And he's desperately afraid of that. And so when he saw that Iran was talking about closing the Strait of Hormuz, he started panicking. And what does he do when he panics? He gets on Truth Social. And here's a couple of things that he wrote yesterday that demonstrates how panicked he was about it. So here's the first one. He writes in all caps, "Everyone, keep oil prices down. I'm watching. You're playing right into the hands of the enemy. Don't do it." So here he is worried about rising oil prices and rising gasoline prices. Of course, he lies about the price of gasoline all the time. And I guess he's I don't know who exactly he's talking to here when he says everyone keep oil prices down. Is he talking to the oil companies? I guess they're just supposed to eat the increased cost if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. They're supposed to just eat the costs of having to buy oil at a much higher price now and not pass that on to the consumer to please the dear leader. So it's ridiculous, but that's what he's doing. Then the second tweet he put out, which was even stupider, he writes, to the Department of Energy, drill, baby, drill. And I mean now. And this is, it shows 2 things. One, more evidence of his panic. But secondly, once again, it shows what a complete idiot he is, because he thinks the Department of Energy drills for oil. The Department of Energy doesn't drill for a single drop of oil. The oil companies do. So I don't know what he expects the Department of Energy to do. They can't do a damn thing to increase the supply of oil. Oh, and then he also sent Secretary of State Little Marco begging China. Here you go. Here's an article from CNBC. U.S. calls on China to prevent Iran from closing Strait of Hormuz and disrupting global oil flows. So this article goes on to say that Trump sends little Marco Rubio to go begging to China to step in and convince Iran not to close the Strait of Hormuz. So the man's flailing, the man's panicked. So you got him panicking about the economy. He's also worried about his MAGA base breaking up to some degree. Now, the hardcore cult, he will never lose. But the hardcore cult is not as big as you would think, and it certainly doesn't constitute everyone who voted for him. And you have segments of his base who are now going to war with each other. And this is inevitable, by the way. The further we go into the Trump presidency, the closer we get to the next election, they are going to be going at each other fast and furious. It's going to get ugly because the only thing that really holds them all together is the cult of personality surrounding Donald Trump. But as it becomes more and more clear to all these fools that Trump is not going to be on the scene all that much longer, they're going to be fighting for dominance. Anyway, so you have over the issue of Iran, different factions of the MAGA coalition taking different positions and fighting with each other. Some of them openly unhappy with Trump. Some people, there's a lot of people on social media saying that's it, they're done with Trump. He promised no more wars, and here he is, not even 6 months, and he's starting a war with Iran. You had Steve Bannon warning before the attacks that if he did it, he would be betraying MAGA. You've had other prominent people speak out against this. You have, here's an article, you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene going to war against, Mark Levin on Fox News. Marjorie Taylor Greene is in the, America First, no wars at all wing of MAGA, while Mark Levin is, essentially he is the definition of a neocon, which I thought MAGA hated, but I guess he also kisses Trump's ass enough that people are cool with him. Because MAGA, the neocons weren't supposed to be part of the Trump coalition, but now it looks like the neocons, at least when it came to bombing Iran, is running the MAGA coalition, which is controlling Trump. And so you have Marjorie Taylor Greene going to war with him. You got these people all over the place going to war with each other, people speaking out against Trump. Then you have Trump trying to tamp this down by going after a Republican Congressman, Thomas Massie, hard. Here's what he posted yesterday about him. This lengthy post just attacking Massie. Then he quotes it and says, "Get this bum out of office." And why? Because Massie is out there saying, correctly, that Trump's attack on Iran is unconstitutional and illegal. And of course, Trump can't have that, so he's trying to get everybody back into line. There's been a series of polls that have come out that show that the American people are adamantly opposed to a war on Iran, or a war against Iran. And so Donald Trump is desperate. Although he wanted the glory and the praise for attacking Iran, he does not want this to spiral into a full-fledged war, because, this poll, one of these polls was like 85% of the American people oppose going to war with Iran. When the hell do the 85% of the American people agree on anything? That's about as strongly against something as you can get. And so Donald Trump risks effectively ruining, destroying the rest of his presidency if this turns into all-out war, which again is what Tucker Carlson, another person who has been very critical of Donald Trump, said would happen if Trump goes to war with Iran. He would effectively destroy the rest of his presidency. So Trump is desperate to avoid all that. So shortly after bombing Iran, I think he started to panic because of all of these things. And so now he wants to put an end to it. So what does he do? He wants a ceasefire. Well, he couldn't get a ceasefire agreement as quickly as he wanted one. Oh, also, he also wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize, which is about the most laughable thing you can imagine. And I think the reason, and he really does, because he's spoken about it many times, and his people are all over the place on social media talking about how he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. So they're obviously doing it because Trump wants them to be doing that. And I think one of the reasons he wants the Nobel Peace Prize is because he knows what history is going to think of him. I think he has an idea. He knows the crimes he committed. He knows that he incited a violent insurrection. He knows he attempted to overthrow the republic. He knows he's a convicted felon. He knows that despite saying he won by a landslide, that he actually won re-election with one of the smallest popular vote margins in history. Despite the claims that he won the 2020 election, he knows he lost it. So you put all these things together. He knows he is deeply unpopular. He knows how history is going to remember him. And so he is desperate to have some sort of accomplishment that he thinks will, vault him to respect in the eyes of history. And so that's why he is so desperate for the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think that's another reason that he desperately wanted a ceasefire. I think this idiot really thinks that essentially starting a war, then demanding a ceasefire is going to win him the Nobel Peace Prize. I think he really is that stupid. So anyways, he wants desperately a ceasefire. He doesn't get it quickly like he wanted. So what does he do? Well, he just announces that he has one. Why not? He does it all the time with domestic politics. He just says shit that are completely divorced from reality, but he just says things as if they're true, hoping that people will believe it, and or hoping that if he says it enough, that he can just will it into being. And I think that he also believes that just by announcing a ceasefire, that puts pressure on the other two parties, Israel and Iran, to actually, agree on a ceasefire. And maybe there is some truth to that. But that's what I think happened here. I think he just desperately wanted a ceasefire, didn't get it immediately, so he just friggin' announced that he had one. And so he's announcing a ceasefire while the other two countries are still friggin' bombing each other. It's just so stupid. And then when it's clear to the world that there is no freaking ceasefire, this moron once again goes back on Truth Social and starts rage posting about Israel and Iran violating the ceasefire agreement. So here's what he writes. This is the first of a series of tweets or Truth Social posts that he put out. He writes in all caps, "The ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States." So he puts that out at 1:08 a.m. And about not even a half hour later, he writes this. "Too late, Jerome Powell of the Fed will be in Congress today in order to explain, among other things, why he is refusing to lower the rate." So here this idiot, in the midst of this war that he has gotten us involved in and desperately trying to get a ceasefire, and he's angry about it, he's up rage posting about it at 1 o'clock in the morning, his next post is about interest rates and trying to get Jerome Powell, trying to bully him into lowering interest rates. I think this shows that this is all connected to him. Because he thinks that the reason the economy is, going in the toilet, headed towards recession, is because Jerome Powell won't lower interest rates. And he thinks if he does lower interest rates, suddenly the economy will be booming. Again, he's a moron. So I think these two things are linked. He desperately wants a ceasefire, in part because he's worried about the economic damage. So here he is posting about the ceasefire. And then the next post posting about interest rates. Then the next post, he's back to the ceasefire stuff. And he says, "Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Donald J. Trump." And then the next one, "Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect." What the hell is this idiot talking about? We'll do a plane wave? Anyway, so that's kind of where we are. Now, whether or not we get to a ceasefire, we probably will. And I certainly hope that we do. But the fact is, this guy is insane. This man is deeply disturbed. He is a psychologically damaged person. He is breathtakingly stupid. He is highly emotional, easily persuadable, and dangerously impulsive. This man changes his mind on a dime, based on his emotions, based on something he sees on Fox News, based on a dream he has. Who the hell knows? This man makes no sense. He doesn't understand virtually anything. And he's a danger. He's an absolute danger. Now, I don't think that this is going to get out of hand. I think this will probably die down. But who the hell knows? And who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? You know, this is an increasingly dangerous world. And we have an absolute idiot as President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief of the military. A man who has no regard for the rule of law, no regard for the Constitution, cares only about himself, cares about absolutely nothing else. He truly is a sociopath. And if you understand what that means, you know how dangerous it is to have someone like that as President of the United States. Which just makes me all the more angry that we have such a pathetic media who has never, and still to this day does not, adequately explain to the American people who and what this man is. All indications are that this man is deeply disturbed psychologically. And the media has never covered that. Not in any real way. How is that not relevant? We're seeing how it is relevant. It is threatening the entire world as we speak. The entire world is threatened by this man's mental illness. That's where we are. Anyway, that's how I think we got to where we are right now. And how, over the last 2 weeks, we got to a place where this idiot engages in an illegal, unconstitutional act of war. And then immediately thereafter, almost immediately thereafter, announces to the world that there's a ceasefire when it's obvious there was no ceasefire. Anyway, to all you who voted for this idiot, good job, you freaking morons. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.